Tuesday at 4:30. That means it's time for the Urban Design Commission. This is another virtual meeting, as everybody sees plainly. Most of us have become used to what we need to do during virtual meetings, but those of us who may need a reminder or aren't quite sure, Stefan from the city's IT department is going to give us a little reminder on how to conduct ourselves.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members of the commission, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. In this meeting, panelists have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. Panelists also have the ability to add pronouns after their names if they choose. Please do not alter the current naming convention. Simply add text after your name. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on commission members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. Staff will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair Goodhart, floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Stefan. Let's see, roll calls noted. Next up is approval of minutes. For those of us who have poured through them. No? Oh, Lois, I see your hand up. Is there a second, Craig? Okay, great. Minutes are approved. Next up, general public comment. We received no registrations for general public comment, so we will move on to disclosures and recusals. Alder, I see. Let's see. First of all, Alder Alduris.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I had my hand up to second the approval of the minutes, so I did not in time.
All right, thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, I need to recuse myself from item number 2.
Item 2. Okay. Thank you. Okay, and we'll turn it over now to Janine for the agenda overview.
Thank you, Chair. This evening's meeting officially has 5 discussion items on it. And the first item on the agenda, number 2, is the East-West Bus Rapid Transit, or ERT, Station Design Competition. Justin Sternberg from Madison Metro is here to tell you about that. There is a UDC staff report in your packet, which explains more what the process was and what the UDC is tasked with this evening. They're requesting that you accept the report. Team. Item number 3 is 640, 644, and 646 West Washington Avenue. This is a comprehensive design review for signage. They're requesting final approval. Please note that there was an updated, amended staff report as well as an amended application packet. Simply staff working with the applicant to work out a few final details before the meeting tonight. And note that staff is recommending this for a possible consent item. At this point, I forgot to share the agenda, and I'll do that. There's one thing before I continue on the agenda I wanted to tell the public. Please note that you can send comments on agenda items to urbandesign@cityofmedicine.com. Please note that any comments received after 3 p.m. the day of the meeting won't get until after the meeting. And lastly, I wanted to remind the public, if you wish to speak on an item, try to register as far in advance as you can. We understand sometimes it takes a little bit more time to get logged in, but we certainly appreciate that to make sure we can catch a registration and let you speak your comments for any particular item. But jumping back to the agenda, I had mentioned item number 2 and 3, and item number 4 is 3330 Marsh Road. It's new construction in an urban design district number 1. Initial final approval is requested. And note that this is a permitted use, so it will not go to Plan Commission or Common Council. So the UDC will can make their final determination this evening. Item number 5 is 6321 Town Center Drive. This one is an amendment to a previously approved plan development, GDP SIP, for three-story buildings. Initial final approval is requested, and a reminder to the Commission that you did see an informational presentation on March 31st. Your feedback is incorporated into the staff report. If receives at least initial approval, it will go to the Plan Commission on June 7th and Common Council on June 15th. The last discussion item for this evening is 216 South Hamilton Street. This is a new development in UMX zoning. Initial final approval is requested. And a reminder to the Commission that they heard an informational presentation for this on March 31st. Those comments have been incorporated into your staff report. And this would go on to Plan Commission on June 7th. And one item of note for the Commission, there is some public comment that was recently added to the Legistar file from the Bassett District of Capital Neighborhoods. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, per the staff recommendation, is there a motion for approval of item number 3 on the consent agenda? Tom, is that a motion, and Shane a second? Okay. Seeing no other hands raised, then by unanimous consent, item number 3 is hereby approved. Thank you very much. That brings us back now to item number 2, the BRT station design competition. And I think Justin is with us, and certainly we're ready to hear what you have to say anytime you're ready there, Justin.
All right. Good evening, everyone. As Janine mentioned, my name is Justin Stuenberg. I'm the general manager at Metro Transit. I'm here to present to you the BRT station concept design competition. And I, Janine, I think is pulling up.
Yeah, I hope that's okay, Justin. Let me know when you'd like to forward.
Yep, that's fine. So if we can go back to that first slide, essentially this competition is intended to pick a design concept for our bus rapid transit system. So, but first, I guess if we can go to the second slide.
And I'm going to apologize. There might be a slight delay on your side.
Okay. So first, I'll just give a little bit of background for the bus rapid transit line. What are the stations intended to do? So these are significantly enhanced bus stops, more akin to a small rail station, that are intended to provide additional comfort and amenities for passengers. Also speed the boarding process, typically by having some fare system at the station, as well as having a raised boarding height that kind of matches the floor height of the bus so that people don't have to step up and those in mobility devices can roll in without a ramp. And then be recognizable as a piece of the system that is a premium rapid transit part of the system. And so for that last piece, it's particularly important for the stations to be consistent across the line. And so that's one clarification that I'd add here, is that the design more or less that we're proposing is the design that would go across the entire system, and that we would not design different stations at different locations. That said, there may be a couple, spot things that have to get changed from one location to the next, but the general intent would be that overall station design would be consistent across the line. So next, why are we doing a competition around this? So there's a couple reasons, but primarily this enables us to get a more uniquely Madison design rather than just using an off-the-shelf design that maybe other systems have already used. This allows us to do something more unique for Madison. And the picture here is one from Albuquerque that is obviously quite unique and quite Albuquerque, Route 66 specific. It also creates more community interest and excitement. And I think we did see that out, as we'll talk about in a minute. And it allows us to provide a bit more stakeholder participation, in, especially of groups that maybe aren't professional architects, that they have a couple different designs to kind of compare and contrast against rather than just providing a general direction. So we can go to the next one. So we released this back in March. Overall, we received 61 design submissions. From there, we went through a screening process with our architect and engineer to make sure that the designs could reasonably be adapted to be constructible, as well as to be within our budget. We did provide a budget for each station with our call for designs. And this did a lot, and then our design consultant did evaluate those and screen many out because of cost concerns. From there, those 23, we did post on the website, solicited public comment. We also sent it to a couple different stakeholders, including UW and the city's Historic Preservation Department, and received feedback from them. Ultimately, the public feedback was quite successful. We had over 2,600 comments from the public, which was really helpful, and I think showed a lot of engagement in the process. Those comments varied from "I like it" or "I don't like it" to more nuanced descriptions of what particular elements they did and did not like. And so we, as a staff report, we compiled and kind of assembled, based on those comments, both from the public and the other stakeholders, we created a report that scored the different designs based on a list of criteria that we had set in the outset of the competition. And again, taking into account a lot of those public comments and stakeholder comments. So that report is what I'm here to present to you today. The staff report recommends a first, second, and third place winner. The first place winner would receive a $10,000 prize. The second place and third place would each get $5,000. And we would then take the winning design and give that to our design consultant, who would refine that into a buildable set of plans. There may be certainly tweaks going forward in terms of the final product, but the intent would be to keep that original design intent. But I do want to emphasize, while we are making recommendations, ultimately the UDC is, it is up to your discretion, and you do have the authority to change those recommendations if you so choose. So with that, I can go through the recommendations. So this is our recommended first place. This design, folks liked, but it was unique, especially you'll see in another picture here, both with the roof elements and the interior elements. Also provides shelter for waiting passengers at the end from wind and rain on the walls. And if you go to the next one, it provides a pretty unique kind of greenhouse there in the middle that allows us to place our real-time screens up in there, as well as provide opportunities for public art. Both this one and another one, I'll say there are some limitation. There's a lot of greenery shown on the roof and on the sides. There will be some limitation on what we can do on that front, especially on the roof, because these are not, the roof structure can only support so much, but certainly we will try to adhere to the original intent as much as possible. The second place recommendation is this design. If we can go to the next slide. This is a bit more simple, which many people liked. It provides nice, simple, clean lines with the wood paneled ceiling. And it's just an open concept that allows people to kind of navigate cleanly around the station design or the station. Go to the next one. And then it does have some elements of greenery there at the base of the station at the end, but nothing shown on the roof in this particular example. And then the third place recommendation is this one, again, with the green roof features and glass panels along the back that have the opportunity for community artworks. And there was a lot of people that really liked the colorful elements here and the kind of unique shape of the roof and structure, as well as those community art panels. There are some limitations again here on what we can do on some of these panels, just because of maintenance. But certainly some elements of these designs we could carry forward. So with that, I guess I would open the floor for discussion, any questions that any of you have, and then ultimately ask that the UDC move on a recommendation, even if it's not the staff recommendation, so that we can move forward with our design.
Okay, thanks, Justin. There are no more speakers registered to present, so I will ask the commission if they have any questions or comments for Justin. Rafiq.
So as I understand it, we're just making a motion for one of the three that.
Yeah, we can make the request is that we accept the report and the order in which they've prioritized the contestants. If you or others on the commission don't agree with that order, then we would have to discuss that and make a motion that ultimately the majority would agree with for a different order.
Well, yeah, if that was the case, I just want to make sure, but I was going to make that motion, but I see another hand up, so I will wait to see what he says before I make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Russell.
Well, I just want to say it's really encouraging the way that the process was used to reach out to the community. I think all the designs are really fabulous. One particular feature I'm having a hard time letting go of, thinking about our current bus stops is the feature of having some wind screening and blocking for people that are waiting in the winter for the bus. These all seem to be very open in their design. So Justin, I'm just curious if that was a topic that was discussed. Any thoughts on concerns about that?
It was, for sure. There were many comments around that. And actually that was the first place recommendation here. It's a little hard to see, but it does have a more of an enclosed end there. So essentially it's the size of one of our bus shelters and is similarly kind of enclosed on three sides. And so that does provide some weather protection there. Ultimately, we do have to, there's some physical space constraints there for ADA access and maneuverability and things that make it difficult to enclose the entirety of the station. But we as staff do feel that this provides a fairly large area that would be relatively weather protected. That's I feel a reasonable solution in this case.
Thank you. And it's my understanding that when a winner is selected and as you move through these, necessarily there will be tweaks and modifications to bring it to a final design, and that'll come back to our commission.
So I don't know. I know that there was some question on that, and Janine may have something to weigh in there.
Yes, thank you. Chair, is that all right if I speak?
Yes. Yes, please.
Thank you. So the city attorney did kind of review this, and the Urban Design Commission has not reviewed other bus shelters. I mean, these are technically placed in the public right of way, whereas the projects that we review are within a property boundary. Therefore, determined that the UDC would not review the final design. However, I would be happy to report back to the commission with details on what that final design looks like, just as an FYI.
Okay, thank you. So this is it, gang. This is our opportunity to weigh in on comments and recommendations. Shane.
Thanks. Just one comment looking at the first place recommendation. It doesn't seem like the covered roof area is as deep as some of the others, that there's actually like a pretty significant opening through the roof, or what's perceived as the roof. And I wonder if that's enough coverage from rain and the elements kind of falling down. And maybe something to look at closer if that moves forward as the preferred concept.
Yeah, so in this case, actually, this center area is covered with glass or some Lexan or something. And so the intent here is that it's essentially a clear glass and or polycarbonate ceiling. So it is still protected from weather, but does allow light through.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom. Uh-oh. Tom, we're back to the we can't hear you. It's futile.
Tom, can you email me your phone number?
I had to do that. Tom, you're muted now because it was a little incomprehensible. While we're trying to work that out with Tom, anyone else have any comments? Christian?
Yeah, my first take on these ones with the green roofs was thinking that these probably aren't, structurally strong enough to support at least the green roofs that are pictured in some of the drawings. And I'm wondering, it's hard to vote on these if we're looking at something that probably isn't going to actually be in the final thing. And I'm just wondering is there like some type of criteria of if the presenters or contestants had a green roof, that there would really be an effort to try to have some type of green roof, even if it's something a little lighter weight, like a sedum roof, as compared to some of these that have 6 foot tall prairie grasses on them, which I just don't think is really feasible. And I was wondering the same thing that Shane mentioned. It's hard to tell. I wondered if our transit director could give us some dimensions on like the depth side to side of a curbside one and one that is accessed on both sides. I picture when I first heard that some of these were going to be placed on the median on East Washington, I got to admit I cringed a little bit, just because if you've ever been caught on the current islands crossing East Washington in the middle there, especially in bad weather, if it's raining out, the spray and the mist from the passing 6 lanes of traffic, it's akin to taking a leisurely stroll through a car wash. So I have concerns about the protection from the elements, and yeah, and the reality of the green roofs. And would it be a case that perhaps some of them, while looking more or less the same from the street level, might be suitable for green roofs, but not all of them? Or what's the feeling on that?
Yeah, on the green roof question, yeah, I think there's no doubt that what is shown here probably isn't achievable. But I think we would, as we're going through the final design process, we would do everything we could to maintain the intent of the original design, including potentially, some scaled back version, as you suggest, of the green roof. I think this one in particular is probably a little bit more feasible because the actual non-glass section of the roof is relatively small in terms of square footage, and so that may make it a bit more achievable. But yeah, I think with all of these, when we went through and assessed, so many of them had green roofs that we didn't want to screen them out just because they had a green roof. So our general assessment was that as long as they could still, as there was the green roof, an extremely integral piece of the design, or could it generally function in much the same way without the green roof? And in this case, we felt that was true. Without the green roof, it certainly has some visual change, but overall, the station still functions in much the same way. On your second question, so it's important. The stations are about 60 feet long. On the curbside locations, they're about 10 feet wide. And in the center stations, they're anywhere between 12 and 15 feet wide. But to your point, in almost every circumstance where we have a center platform station, there are dedicated bus lanes on either side. So there's not general traffic in the lanes that are adjacent to those stations. And so that's one way we control for the spray and the other concerns about being that close to active traffic.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Lois and then Rafiq.
Thank you. And it's really fun to see different designs with the same program attached to them. And see the creativity of this. I have a question though about usability of budget too, because it seems like you have a variety of options here that potentially have a much different dollar value. And, if you choose, number one, it seems like the higher end, it seems like there's a lot more construction to it, more materials and the green roof. And I'm wondering if, by the time you sift through and if you get to, is there a target budget that you need to stay within in, by choosing one of these, are you going to end up deconstructing the design to fit a budget? And is that taken into account with your selection?
Yes, so that was part of our initial screening by our design consultant. So we do have a budget set, and any that they deemed that would exceed that budget, we did screen out. So while you're absolutely correct that there is a cost, there's variability in cost between these different options. At least in our design consultant's opinion, they can all be done within our budget. Now, so this one may be right at our budget, and others may be significantly less than our budget, but they would all be within our budget.
Okay. And with that said, I think there's maybe it's the slide right after the one that's on the screen now that there's a lot going on, and I do like the simplicity of the second one, but I think it might be more of a practicality. Because I really love the one that you chose as your first selection, but I'm a little worried that when you get to the practicality of maintaining and budget and everything, that a lot of what we're seeing might go away. But it's very beautiful. So I would say that you chose correctly for the first, your first one, but I'm just a little worried that what's going to end up being built is not going to resemble this because of the practicalities and costs.
Okay, Rafiq.
Yeah, I was gonna say, somebody made a comment about the weather and enclosures, and I think that if you've ever caught a bus in Madison, rain or snow, unless it's fully enclosed, it doesn't matter. You're gonna be cold and you're gonna get wet. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to accept this report, the order that they've done.
Okay. Is there a second on the motion? Is that a second, Russell? Okay. So the motion's been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? I don't know, Stefan, if you were able to help Tom. I unmuted you, Tom. Can you speak a few words?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, it's okay now?
Yes, it is.
Oh, good. Okay, fine. I don't know. I didn't change any settings. I have no idea what happened. Sorry.
Okay, so the motion is still up for discussion. If you've got any comments or questions, we can still entertain them.
No, I was going to recommend accepting the report. I like the order of the 1, 2, 3, okay. So I'm fine.
Great. Okay. So the motion's been seconded. I see no hands raised for further discussion or in opposition. So then by unanimous consent, the report is accepted and along with the order of the applicant. So congratulations to 1, 2, and 3 for their financial award, their cash awards, and thanks everybody else for participating. Okay, so that gets us now then to number 4, and we get Jessica back. And this is the building in UDD number 1 on Marsh Road.
The development team registered to speak includes Mark Membrino, Gary Blazek, and Robert Borrell. And I'll pull up your slides in just one moment. You can begin anytime.
All right, good afternoon. My name's Mark Membrino from Marshall Park Investments. I'll kick this meeting off for 3330 Marsh Road. Thank you for the opportunity to present our project for the construction of next slide, please. I'm sorry. Thank you for the opportunity to present our project for the 14,400 square foot light industrial spec building. Our group is comprised of a well-seasoned team with vast industrial experience in many markets across the country. The general contractor is Jim Spar from Lions Group. The engineer is Gary Blazek from Beerbecker, who will follow me and take you through the site and landscape plans. And finally, Bob Burrell from Burrell Design Studio is our architect, and he'll lead you through the architecture in detail. Next slide. So here's our site. It's 3330 Marsh Road. It's a 2.1 acre lot that sits behind Viking Electric off Lemuray Drive, as shown on the attached map. This area is most desirable industrial area in Madison because of its great highway access to I-94, 90, in the Beltline, and the great supply of workers in the region. We see this development as an incubator for small contractors looking for a place to start a new business. Next slide, please. So here's our some recent experience. This is when we did Viking Electric, which is directly in front of our subject site. Next slide. And this is IKM, which we are finishing up. And right next to this, we're also building another industrial spec building. So we have a lot of experience in this area. Although this is a new project for us. Go ahead and next slide, please. So what we're trying to address here in the market is the demand for small contractors and new startups that desire to get out of their house and get into their own space. I think that's true for a lot of people these days, but this design really serves those kinds of folks. It's a building that includes 8 small and affordable suites that are clean and very functional for mom and pop industrial users. We've included daylighting and clear story windows with LED lighting to make the spaces well lit and inviting. And finally, there's clear heights of 18 foot that allow for vertical racking, and the building's protected by a sprinkler system. So all in all, we feel like we're bringing to market something that small contractors could just. It's got an office and a small bathroom that they could just turn the key and they could go to work. I'll be followed by Gary Blazik, who will cover the site plan.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Some of the site features, as Mark said, this is just adjacent to the Viking Electric, just to the north, which we came to you a couple of years back. So this complements the site. That site was split into 2 lots back then when we were doing Viking. So this is the remnant lot that we're trying to build on. This lot in the planned use is hits all the compliance with all the zoning requirements. It's a limited industrial. The stormwater features are shared with Viking Electric. I'll show you that on the site plan. We do propose landscaping and we do accommodate a buffer zone for the wetlands. Next slide, Janine. So here's the overall site that shows on the top part, the Viking Electric site, and on the bottom is the 3030 Marsh Road that we're looking at specifically here with the contractor suites there. The stormwater is to the back of our proposed building. And again, that's shared between both the Viking Electric site and our site here. There are wetlands just south of our south property line there. So we are staying away from that. We're providing a 75-foot buffer between the parking lot and the south lot line so that we aren't infringing on any of that stuff. So there will be just some grading in some of that area there too. Next slide, Janine. Here's a close-up of our site specifics. So we're providing a parking stall for each one of these studios with a couple extra parking stalls in the front there. We are providing some bicycle parking in the front there, sidewalk throughout to provide access with doors at the rear of each of these suites. And then we enhance the landscaping in the front and kind of complements what's being built to the north there in the Viking Electric site. Next slide. I think with that, I will turn it over to Bob. He'll talk a little bit more about the architectural features of the building.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. This is Bob Borrell, and we have a linear building. It's 240 by 60 feet in length, and the narrow portion faces Marsh Road. That Viking Electric building, which is on the north end that you saw in the previous site plan, that's about 30 feet high. This is about 19 feet high. So we did some enhancements. It's going to be an engineered metal building construction. So we have some horizontal structural girts that wrap around the building. And we're putting some clear story windows within those girt spaces in the upper third, and that carries around the front and the north facades. Then on the south facade, as you can see in this shot, we have our garage doors. They're 14 feet. Every tenant space gets one. They get an office, a bathroom, and we did a few enhancements here. We added some stone to the front, a horizontal accent band out of a fiber cement product, and wrapped that around the corner. The entry doors are going to be in a slate blue color and metal canopies at each door. Next slide, please. Here's the floor plan, shows our eight compartments. They're really geared toward startup type contractors that need to get out of the house. Next slide, please. Here you see the rear elevation, which faces the stormwater retention area, and then the front that faces the road. It's a mono slope, so the water pitches to the north end and is captured and goes back to the stormwater area. Next slide, please. The north and south elevations. There's an exit door for each tenant and clear story lighting on the north, and then on the south we have our garage doors, main entry, a little bit of color change with the garage doors just to break up the facade. And next slide, please. Let's see, let's keep going. Okay, just a more of a people eye view. Next slide. This is wrapping around to the north end. This is the facade that faces the Viking Electric building. Next slide. Here's the south elevation. Basically, there's contractor parking, turnaround, loading and unloading space here at the garage doors. Next slide. Another view. Next slide. Front elevation. The landscape plan is per the previous one that Gary had, and there are some. The Viking project's going to have some Kentucky coffee trees on the north side of this building, and then this gets an assortment based on that landscape plan. Next slide. These are a couple other projects that have been approved in the same urban design district. Next slide. Another project that was previously approved. Next slide. Our colors for the garage doors, we're keeping with just a fairly muted, warm color scheme. The chocolate and the commercial tan. Next slide. The roof is galvalume. That's really not going to be visible from the street. Next slide. And the cool zinc is, here's an example. It's a deep V ribbed metal panel. It's got a lot of shadow line with dark bronze trim. Next slide. Here are the actual colors. The cement board and that's the color is going to be the bronze on the left. The style is it's a grooved panel. It's a relatively subtle vertical groove. Next slide. Here's examples of the actual stone. The one on the left is a project that we had previously done, and then the blow up on the right. And I think that's it. Next slide. Yes, that's it. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
All right, there are no other registrants to speak, so I'll open it up to the commission for questions or comments. Russell.
Thank you for the presentation. I think your treatment of the building and the materials and the design for this type of building looks nice to me. I think that was careful selection. Some of those elements. A couple of questions, or really just a couple of things that I would like to see and understand is the integration of existing trees, mature trees on the site into the landscaping plan. That those trees, the last time I took that interchange, there is still some buffer out there from the interstate from a lot of those trees. So I think that they're an asset that I think the project would get value from keeping and integrating. The roof plan isn't very clear on this project. I would imagine there are rooftop mechanical units. And the drainage from the roof is not really clear. So I guess those are just some items that are I think we'd like to see in a final presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Any information you can share with us with regard to trees? Because they are asking for a final approval tonight.
This is Gary. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can comment on the trees. This is a good slide to have up here. To the south is the belt line, and there was an aerial, I think, on our location map that showed quite a large cluster of trees down there. None of those are going to be touched. There's going to be some grading just south of the proposed parking area, but the first 30 feet south from our south property line, we're not going to touch at all. So we'll be grading to get a swale in there to get stormwater back to the basin. Some of the other trees along Marsh Road are not the highest quality trees. So those are going to come down and get replaced with the trees we're proposing here to accent the stuff that's happening up on the Viking Electric site. As far as the stormwater, that'll be captured in the back, either in a pipe and directed to the west so that it can drain down into the stormwater, or it may go underneath the sidewalk if there is a swale along the property line for both of these. It'll go, but everything's going to get captured and brought to the west to the stormwater basin. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you for the pointing out the aerial. I think that helps. I think from my perspective too, it's not just the buffer from the highway, but from Marsh Road, just the use of some of that. You said it's not mature or not healthy foliage there.
Yes.
I think that, I rely on your assessment there, but usually we see some good successes from careful integration of trying to preserve some of the health that
right.
is
there. And we're certainly, if there's a nice tree or good quality tree, we always like to save those as well. But a lot of these are not high quality trees. So a lot of them are going to come down and get replaced. But if there's something out there that certainly can be saved, we would certainly do that.
I can address the roof design. This is Bob Borrell. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so there will be no rooftop units here. Each individual space will have a wall-mounted gas unit heater internally. So it's basically we'll have a side vent going to the outside on the side wall of the building. So nothing up on the roof.
Thank you. That helps. Okay. I'll see. Oh, Shane, I do see one more hand raised.
Yeah, just to address Russell's comment and kind of close the loop. Although I don't think the species were documented in the submittal, it did appear like most of the existing trees were willows and not of significant value like we've seen in some of our recent projects before UDC.
Thank you. I'd like to, before I call on Christian, just make sure that the commission brings their attention to the staff report and Janine's request that ultimately for approval, we would need to make a finding that middle panel in this case is an appropriate use of materials on this building. You can see a little bit more explanation on that in her staff report. Christian.
Yeah, just to follow up on the drainage questions, and forgive me, I'm not an architect. I'm not quite as adept at reading these plans, but it looked like there was, dedicated lines that came from the Viking property and fed into this stormwater basin. And I had trouble parsing that out on this project. And I wondered for the parking lot, what is the nature of the drainage to that stormwater basin? Is it just gravity, or
Sure.
is there sewer lines in the parking lot with, feeding into the stormwater basin, or are we letting the slope and direction take care of itself?
Yep, this is Gary. The parking lot will drain from the building to the south, and there will be a swale that's designed to catch all that water, and it'll a ditch, essentially a small swale that'll drain it back to the stormwater basin. That'll help with water quality. All that will be going through vegetated swales and vegetated grass down there. So it's really a simple system, gravity sheet flow off the parking lot to this swale, and then the swale back to the basin.
Okay. And I had one other question on the building. You talked about the natural light and the clerestory windows, but I was curious why there isn't any on the west end of the building. It seems like that unit is really getting short shift, and all of them in general. I mean, the one closest to Marsh Road is going to get the best, but the windows, and maybe this just isn't even a concern for the type of tenants that would be in here, but what's there and on the north side, they're so small, and is it just cost prohibitive, or just not felt like it was needed to possibly have, roof? That seems like the obvious place to let the light in.
Sure, I can address
Curious
that.
as to your design thoughts on that.
Yeah, if you go to the maybe one of the perspectives at where the contractors enter the building, each contractor will have an office, and we provide a sizable window into the office. That's really where they're going to be spending their time. And the back is could be shop, warehouse, storage, but every unit does get at least one clear story back there, even that west one. So where the people spend the majority of the time, they will have a large office direct view to the outside. And they're going to be, they're going to have to be responsible for heating too. So, we're trying to keep the economies of this more geared towards small contractors.
All right.
Okay, Rafiq, and then Craig.
Yeah, I just had a question about the staff report, which says that in this design district, metal panels should not be used as an exterior material except as an integral part of the design. And how are you portraying or saying that this is an integral part of the design? Like, why is it necessary for this design so that an exception should be made?
Is that a question for staff?
No. Absolutely not.
It's for the architect.
That's what UDD says.
Well, this is what we would consider a pre-engineered metal building system. So, with the cost of construction right now, this is really the most economical approach to getting this type of square footage, height, volume, and you have a primary frame. It's a vertical steel column, but then everything else is a horizontal girt. So your panels have to span 4 feet. So metal panels are the best solution because structurally they can span the 4 feet between those horizontal girts. Things like siding you'd have to put a whole secondary framing system on top in order to put siding or some other material. So metal panel just fits hand in hand. This is actually kind of a rapid ship type building because it is a modular type product. So the time frame to get these is quite quick compared to other alternatives in the marketplace right now.
Thank you.
So then I guess,
yeah, go ahead, Rafiq. I was just going to ask if that answers your question.
No, not really. I understand what he's saying, but I guess if the and I guess this question is for Janine or Kevin or whoever. If the regulations say that it cannot be used, and then we get a project that is using it for cost-effective reasons, does that qualify as a valid exception? Or, does that make sense?
Yep.
Because I understand why they're using it, but it says it can't be used unless it's an integral part of the design. And does cost make that? Does that equate to integral?
Well, there is a precedent for other buildings that have been approved, that are similar type construction in this district.
Right. I guess we're being asked to maybe make a comment on the part of the UDD acceptance of metal panel in exceptional design merit. And I think we've made that finding in the past.
Chair, may staff jump in?
Yes.
So kind of just repeating a little bit of what Cliff already said. This is, the current text as it exists in the Urban Design District guidelines. And the commission has found in previous projects that metal panel is acceptable, but it is up to the applicant to kind of provide some reasoning why that is an important part of their design and why it makes it successful. And staff did work with the design team to kind of look at some alternatives to add some more variation to the design. So the commission can make a determination that it meets the exception or not. It's up to you.
Mm-hmm. So then my follow-up question is, I understand that, and I'm not saying that this does or does not work or should not pass, but then my question is, the exceptions are based on exceptional design, but this program or this type of building doesn't lend itself to exceptional design. It is what it is. It's a rectangle with some garage doors, right? So
perhaps it's within the context of Urban Design District 1, an industrial area. Food for thought.
Yeah, so I think what she's saying is this is an industrial district, say, versus say State Street or another downtown district where exceptional merit may mean something different because of its context. But that is not a requirement for the commission to approve it. And that's why we're here to discuss this. Rafiq, I lost your camera. Are you still with us here? Oh, what happened? Okay, we'll get him back. I'll go to Craig and then Jessica and see what happened to Rafiq.
Thanks, Cliff. Kind of following on Rafiq's same comment. If we look at similar buildings in the area, and the style and architecture of similar buildings, and those that we would say are exceptional, we look at either recently constructed buildings or ones that we've approved recently in the past, in comments we've made about their systems architecture and what exceptional design has been. To my recollection, metal panel in this regard has not been shown or demonstrated as exceptional design. And I think that's why we're looking specifically. I understand the economics of it, but as far as meeting exceptional design of why metal panels should be used, I think that's the justification we're looking at, because we haven't seen that done previously. Typically, metal panel, when it's done like this, is geared towards just economics itself.
but making an exceptional design with just metal panel. I guess that's what we're looking for to understand.
I believe we have, if I'm not mistaken, Janine approved a few on the side of the belt line in the past few years with metal panel. Is that correct?
That is correct. There were some previous examples. I can forward to those slides that showed somewhat similar.
Yeah, and if you look at the previous examples, I guess I would say that the project before us is a little bit more true to an industrial building use, and it's a little bit more honest than some of the agricultural and sort of residential forms that have been approved in the past. This is kind of a nice, clean industrial building. While I have the floor, with the exception of that rusticated stone base, which is driving me nuts. And I think that if you're going to do something like that, it should just be a dark gray stained CMU or a dark brick or just metal panel. Let's see, Jessica and then Lois.
Yeah, I wanted to say that it looks like the detailing with this system is nice. The way it's trimmed up at the top and on the corner in that elevation we were just looking at. I did have a question about cars parking so close to that metal panel then, if you're going to buffer that a little bit, or if you have experience with how that metal panel meets the ground, where snow might be shoved or cars come pretty close to that window. Just curious about that. If you've used this panel before and you know how it withstands that.
Yeah, there'll be bumper guards for the tires in front, so they obviously don't run into the panel. The foundation will be poured a couple inches higher to protect the panel at the base, it's a durable product. It's all framed in steel, so we don't have to worry about wood plates rotting and such.
Okay, is that it, Jessica?
Yeah, thank you.
And by the way, we'd be happy to entertain looking at a different masonry product. I'm totally open to that.
Yeah, thank you. I think this sort of rustic material is just not appropriate for a nice, clean, industrial-looking building. Lois, and then I see Rafiq's back.
Thank you. I was going to bring up the stone base. I was thinking more on the lines of a burnished block would be really nice and a dark color. I think the metal panel is appropriate to this site. And I do agree with Cliff is that the just kind of plain rectangle feels more modern and appropriate in design than, the gables and everything that was, in some of the other examples you gave. The thing that Jessica brought up, I was going to bring up as well, but more about salt. When you have a parking lot right up against a steel building, one of the things I think we want to ensure is that the building is going to remain looking nice for, a decade or two. And when you're salting near a building like that, that's what's really going to eat up that steel. So I'm happy to hear that you have a little buffer there. And I would almost encourage you to run your masonry along the entire base if it's a real simple masonry, if that's possible, just to make sure that you're not going to have any salt hitting that steel. But I think that it's a perfectly appropriate location for a steel building.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Rafiq, we lost you there for a minute, but you're back, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask any more questions because I don't want to get kicked out again.
We didn't kick you out.
But I was gonna ask if Janine could. I didn't hear her reply to what she was saying, so I was gonna ask if she could repeat that for me.
I'll do my best. So I
And
think
don't kick him out.
No, I would never. I think the question was design merit, that the metal, whether or not the metal is appropriate. And I guess my response was that you cited the text as it exists right now in Urban Design District 1, and I was mentioning to the commission to keep in mind that Urban Design District number 1 is very industrial, and to consider those design merit in the context of an industrial district. Thank you.
Okay.
I hope that helps.
Nope. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or comments or motions?
Well, if that's the case, I'll make a motion since I'm still unmuted.
Yeah, you're still unmuted. Go for it.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Okay.
Any conditions?
With any conditions?
Yeah, I got kicked out, so I missed some of those conditions. So I'll let Lois state them because she looks like she had the second hand.
All right, Lois, if you're going to second it and
I will
with some
second it
clarifications.
with the asking for the alterations of the stone base to a simpler, more appropriate to the site in the architecture, masonry, and consider, and I know that the rendering isn't showing it, but consider bringing the steel off of the grade a little further than you have it. And I don't know what you're planning, how many inches that is, but just enough that you're not going to have degradation of that steel from all the salt on that parking lot. Potentially, maybe even bringing the CMU across.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, if I don't see any hands raised, then by unanimous consent, final approval as requested has been granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're up to unfinished business. Item number 5, 6321 Town Center Drive. And this is coming back to us following an informational presentation we had a couple months back or so.
Thank you. The development team ready to present is on behalf of Kevin Burrow will be presenting. And Kevin, I'll have your slides up shortly.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Kevin Burrow with Canothy and Bruce, and we are presenting to you for final approval tonight the revisiting of the PUD that was previously approved for the Town Center Drive area. The site is located directly on Metro Terrace and Town Center Drive, across from the Town Center condominiums and just south of the fire station. Next slide. So the contact site images, as was presented last time at informational, is we are surrounded by the condominiums on one side. Next slide. And the fire department is directly across the street, and it's currently a vacant field area where we are proposing this development. Next slide. With the overall site layout is shown here, we have made some minor updates to this with regards to some comments we received at the informational. We did look at relocating the drive to the north side of building number 2 to get that closer to the amenity area, but given the grades and how the site slopes from north to south, we were not successful in being able to achieve a drive into the underground parking at a reasonably decent slope. So we ended up leaving it here, but we did square off the parking in front of the building and enlarge the green space in the middle to be able to accommodate more green area in the center of the site while making a more uniform frontage along the building. Next slide. As far as the exterior goes, we did take your comments into consideration and have revised. Where we originally had brick running up into the gable elements, on some of these features, we have lowered it all down to be consistent across the way, such that there is no brick riding up into the gable, and it's just much more cohesive image than that you see here. If you go to the next slide, then the main entry feature, which is shown in the upper right-hand corner, has also been redesigned such that we've now created a colonnade element a roof over it with an archway, and also added some wall sconces on each side, such that is a unique feature to each of the buildings and does signify the entrance. Just as a reminder, all the entries are located on the interior of the property around the drive areas, so not along the sidewalk areas. Next slide. So the exterior material palette, as presented last time, it's asphalt shingles on the roof, and then 3 different colors of composite siding for the siding elements and trim, cast stone base, and then a reddish brick veneer, which is a multicolored palette to it. Next slide. So these are the images along the street, along Metro Terrace here, where you're looking at building number 1. And these are all private direct entries into units, and then there's a stairwell that comes down, which you see the 2 people walking up to. That's not a public entrance. That's just a resident use only for an exterior stair access point. Next slide. Here's a view between buildings number 1 and 3 as well, and you can see building 2 in the background. And again, just to show how the character of the gables are all uniform across these. Next slide. And then a view of building 3 here. And next slide. Here's a view then on the interior where you can now see the main entry feature off to the right-hand side, where we've pulled the entry canopy out, put a pitched roof on it, and done the archway unique to that area with regards to, and then also adding the wall sconces. So again, with the brick elements being pulled down to a consistent height, we're utilizing this element at the main level to designate the main entry. Next slide, please. And then just another image. This is on the interior for building number 1, where again, you can see how more prominent the main entry is. And then we've got landscaping screening sort of covering the private residential areas as well. So with that, I can open it up to any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you. I don't think there are any other registrants to speak. So I will ask Lois for her comments or questions.
Thank you, Kevin. It's really nice looking development. So, and I like your colors too. The only thing I would change is the width of the stairs going up to some of the private units, where you've got some narrow ones, and then you've got the wide one that's on the screen now. Well, it was, or where the couple is going up. That's, I'm assuming, not a public entry, and being so wide, it does 2 things. It gives you the appearance of maybe an entry point for the public, but also I think it makes the deck less usable for the occupant, because now you've got stairs all the way across. So the only thing I would change is to narrow that up and make it similar to the other porches.
Okay, and that is a public exit stair on the other side of those doors.
That is. Okay, so it's not into a unit.
No, not at all. It's just for exiting out.
Okay, then you can, I retract my comment. I thought that was also a entry into a unit, so.
No.
Okay, then I have no comments. I think it's a really nice looking development.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments, suggestions or motions? Shane.
Thanks. I had a couple small recommendations on the landscape plan. And first, if you look on the west or northwest side of the property and the path that kind of circles around the outside, I thought it'd be kind of nice to take that wavy drift of plants that you have along the building foundation and maybe create a pocket on the outside of the path so it feels like you're moving through the landscape more. In general, I think there's areas around the site where the landscape and the planting bed edge could be simplified so it's not so swoopy and very tight spaces. So more so, I would say along the east edge and that east frontage, where it could probably just be simplified and the planting bed doesn't really do much or add much to the design by all of the swoops in some of those tight corners. And then I think it's like a community patio that's near the bioretention basin. But I felt like that area could use some planting design and a little bit of ornamental interest around the edges. It also seems appropriate that it would have a couple bike racks in that area. And I'm going to go on mute now.
Thanks, Shane. You can't throw the kids outside because you're already out there, I guess. Okay. While Shane is still have those thoughts fresh in his mind, I just would ask Kevin if he understands the gist of the comments, or if you do need any further explanation on those.
No, I do understand his comments, and I can appreciate them, and we should be able to make those adjustments, no problem.
Okay, great, thanks. I see Alder Lemmer would like to address the commission.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really just have positive feedback for the design of this development. I think it's very attractive. It does match the size and the mass of the condos across the street, which is a good thing. As has already been mentioned, the color palette I think is really nice, and I think the materials are excellent selections too. I did want to share, in case it comes up or is being considered at all, the parking is important here. So please don't think about trying to underpark it or reduce the parking in the plan. The roads are kind of narrow over here, so street parking isn't a great option. And of course, you've got that fire station there. And the transit over here will be increasing, hopefully, but it's not as great as it could be right now. I did have a neighborhood meeting for this a couple of months ago. I would say it was lightly attended, even though I think it was pretty well promoted. So I haven't received a great deal of feedback from the neighborhood as far as the design. Which hopefully means that folks are generally comfortable with it and like it. And I also did want to say, I am a very lay person at this, but I did like the landscaping plan, especially the large amount of lilac trees. So that's all I wanted to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Alder Lemmer? Thank you. Okay. Let's see, we've seen this before. They've addressed our comments. We've given some feedback on the landscaping. Craig?
Thanks, Cliff. So I agree, this is a really good design, and I would like to make a motion for final approval. I don't see anybody else's hands raised, and I think just by the quality of the design, with the only comment of Shane's comment on the landscaping that Kevin has addressed and talked about.
Okay, is that a second, Lois?
It sure is.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, I see no other hands raised. Any further discussion on the motion for final approval? Seeing no hands raised, then by unanimous consent, we've granted the project final approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
You bet. That brings us to item number 6, the last item on our agenda. And this is another one that we've seen and have provided comment and are anxious to see the final results.
The development team representative is Christopher Gush. Chris, I'll have your slides up in just a moment. You can start anytime.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, oh yeah, hi everybody. So we were here, I think last part of March, presenting this infill project down at 216 South Hamilton, across from the courthouse. We were, I think, Janine, you can go to the next one here. So this is a 4-unit live work project. It's owner occupied. And then there's a small sort of subscription restaurant that's taking up about 200 square feet. Based on some comments that we got and some changes that we'll review here coming up, I know there was a comment about some material terminations that we I think we addressed here. Roof access, that's a really interesting one because the people that have expressed interest in this project have expressed more interest in having a solar installation versus usable outdoor space. So, I'm not quite sure how to respond to that because the interest has been, can we put a solar installation to charge our car? That's what we'd rather do. Okay, well, what about a roof deck? I don't want that. I want to charge my car. So that's been one of the really, really interesting pieces of feedback we've received in the past couple months. And then landscaping, there was a comment about one of the bamboo species, and we revised that to a more hardy species. We did make a slight change to the southeast corner of the building to better reflect what the setbacks were on the site. I had misinterpreted what one of the rear yard setbacks would be because it's kind of an odd shaped site. So if we can skip forward, I can walk you guys through. So this is UMX. Oh, and before I forget, so one comment from Janine's summary is that this is going to Plan Commission for the demolition of the existing building. This project will not be heard at Plan Commission. We are compliant with UMX zoning, and we're not asking for any conditional uses or anything outside the existing zoning. So, okay. So again, 4 live work units, 1 small commercial. You can see the site there right across from the courthouse on Hamilton Street. One more. We can skip that. Still complies with everything. There's the site. There's the existing property, or existing house on the site. Okay, so what we extended the entry on the upstream side towards the Capitol to better define that and to better terminate the wood bands that we'll see here in the next slide. The wood bands on the that's the alley side. So we're turning it back and terminating everything right there. On the grade level, those are the wood bands are just terminating about 2 inches above the concrete. Yep, right there. And then if you want to go to the next one, Janine. So this is where we define that entry a little bit more, and then we dove the roof accent bands down into the entry for the proposed 200 square foot restaurant area. Other than that, we didn't really change a whole lot. If you look at the alley, you can see where we made a small modification. I think it's the next one, Janine. Nope, that's still the looking down Hamilton. There you go. So we picked up some more area for landscaping, and then we had to set back. We had to create ended up being about a 3-foot setback to define the define the 2 live work units there, and it just made a natural excuse me, a natural break point to split that up in terms of materials. So I think go to the next one. Yeah, these are just the same ones you see in the interior, really hasn't changed. And I think the last slide, if we go down, is what we selected to replace the previous, I guess for materials then. So we do have a combination of 2 different insulated metal panels for the field. Now the majority of this is glass. You'll see the bulk of the panel would be on the alley side and the rear side. We're just going to use storefront glass for the window systems, and that accent band would just be in aluca bond, pretty vibrant material. All concealed fasteners, and it's just one of our pet peeves is to not have concealed fasteners, so we want to make sure we have that. And we just want to keep the palette very simple, very, very clean. One more, Janine. And then that area in red, that's where we had to bump the footprint back just a little bit. One more. Same thing on the second floor. Let's see, again, that's the alley side where we had to make that minor adjustment. And then I think if we go one more, keep going. Yep, so we changed it to a non-invasive, more hardy bamboo that we would spread throughout the site, but we did get some additional opportunity to landscape back at that area where we're bumping in. So those are the major comments, or I guess the evolution that we've had since March, and more than happy to address any comments or questions anyone has.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments with regard to the presentation or the design? Shane.
Thanks. So I still like the project very much. My only comment was about bike parking, and I know it's a very tight, limited site, but wondering if there was any opportunity to find a home for bike parking that's visible from the street. I'm wondering, maybe in particular along that south edge where you were able to sneak in a small amount of plant material. Is there space for possibly a bike rack or two there where anyone coming for commercial purposes who might be biking there could find a home without having to navigate to the back parking area? But otherwise, yeah, I very much like it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. That's certainly something we could look at, and we would also, I think even a more visible spot would be up at the upstream side where that commercial space is there. There might be an opportunity to fit a couple bike parking stalls up there as well.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Christian.
We go to the landscape plan.
Are you able to see this, or do you want the full landscaping plan?
No, that's good. So I see that you took my advice about changing the bamboo species, but I'm still a little confused. And I think there was possibly just some overlooks on this. I'm confused about what's going along the Hamilton Street side of the building between the entries there, and your renderings. I mean, I assume that was either open space next to the building or possibly built-in planters, but your renderings show just like a solid platform with people sitting on it with no plant material. The upper part between the entry and the commercial area, you have 7 plants labeled F, and there is no F on your plant legend. I assume that those were also meant to be calamagrostis or bamboo, but the total numbers of those and the other ones don't add up on what's on your landscape point things. But more importantly, I just wonder what on that Hamilton Street, what is the intent and where would those plants go? I mean, calamagrostis is a very narrow ornamental grass, but it needs some space, and the bamboo is going to, be constrained by whatever it's in to a certain point, but you can tell by those potted ones there that it spreads out. And if it's jammed into a space really close to the building, it's just going to be like, running up against the building and then flopping out into the sidewalks. I'm just unclear of what the intent of what's actually there. Is there planters? That's not apparent on the renderings, and whether that's even enough available space to have perennial plantings. That it might be more suitable to have beds that are just meant to be planted seasonally with annuals that would be accommodated in such a small place.
Well, I appreciate that, and you're right. The 7Fs on the 7F that's on the upper side of Hamilton, that should have been 7C. So I do apologize about that. So along the alleyway, we were going to build just a curb for a planter there, and that is not represented on the rendering. You're correct, but this was our design intent here, and what we're trying to do is find a way to buffer between the sidewalk and the building. So as a personal preference, we like bamboo and the feather reed grass, and if it's certainly something that we understand would take some maintenance, but we really like the aesthetic of it. We like how it casts shadows. We like how it just the overall feel of it. So yes, we were absolutely trying to make it pretty what's the best way, maybe too unruly in there, with the understanding that we did know that we would have to maintain that pretty heavily. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, or if you had any other concerns about that.
Well, just physically, what is your intent there along Hamilton Street? I mean, where are those plants going? And like I said, in your elevation or your renderings, there are no plants or planters there. There's some structural elements that people are sitting on in one of them, but I'm just wondering what is your intention, and what would be like the width of those? Are we talking a foot wide, foot and a half, or
Okay, I got you. So the two where the two orange entries are on Hamilton, those are concrete entries that go from the sidewalk into each of the 4 units. So there's 2 entries there. Now the green strip from the northern point of the building down to the first entry, and then in the middle, that varies from about 2 feet 2 to about 1 foot 10. We've got a little variance in there, and that's where we would propose to plant along the length of those areas between the entries.
Okay, well that's wider than I would have guessed looking at the drawings and the renderings. Okay, I go for it. I think you're going to struggle to have those plants behave the way that you think they're going to in that spot, but at least early on, before they try to outgrow their bounds and stuff, it probably will be an interesting architectural effect, but I guess we'll find out over a period of time. I've also traversed up that street several times lately, just kind of looking at it, and every time I go up that street or down it, it seems like it's eyes in shadow. And so to the point of the plants and your comments about future solar panels on the roof, it's definitely a shady part of the city, especially with the courthouse looming to the east there, but I find it a very striking looking building, and I really like it. And I wish you the best with your landscaping efforts there.
Thanks, Christian. I hope they're charging slot cars, because that's about all the juice they're going to get. Jessica.
Yeah, maybe I apologize if you've already explained this, but can you explain to me the commercial space 210 that is, I think, on the corner with the red storefront? What is that space, and who owns that?
So right now we've been discussing with the Savvy Cafe that's across the street. They have a full commercial kitchen leased with the county. They have full use of that kitchen. During the pandemic, they started to, obviously their restaurant was, or the cafe over there was closed for any any walk-in or in-person business. Their catering business took off, and then they started thinking about doing some subscription meal services. And we talked to them about it, and it seemed like a really, really interesting idea, to where we would just have a series of probably 8 to 10 lockers in there, and then a customer would get alerted when their meal is ready, and then they would go pick up lunch and dinner at the same time, or just pick up dinner and then take it home and eat it. So there would be no, there wouldn't be any preparation on there. In the facility, it would just be essentially a pickup spot for food.
Got it. Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm wondering what the strategy is for cleaning glass behind the wood vertical slats there along Hamilton Street.
Well, I don't know if I can answer that, but I know that the people that we have been hiring to do the Barracuda have been incredibly ingenious in how they're cleaning some of the glass over here.
Is it a pretty narrow space between the wood and the piece of glass?
It's about 8 inches.
Okay, so they could get a squeegee behind there then.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? We provided information before, and these have been addressed. There's been some good questions. Lois?
I'll make a motion for final approval with the taking into account the desire to have bike parking at the front of the building. And I think that was it. I don't think there were any other changes.
Okay, is that a second, Craig? Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no hands raised for discussion or concern or opposition, then it's unanimous. You've got final approval. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Really sincerely appreciate it.
We look forward to seeing the building. Okay. That brings us to Secretary's report and business by members. Is there anything you'd like to mention, Janine?
Nothing specific other than, don't we have awesome IT staff that help us run these meetings?
Yes.
And then also UDC staff, Julie Cleveland and Kevin Furco. Round of applause.
Yes. The applause is deafening.
Thank you.
Seriously, though, we do appreciate all the help and all the information that's presented and organized for us as a commission to review way ahead of time. It really helps. It makes our job a lot easier, especially considering we used to have these big, huge packets of plans over plans and staples, and and binder clips and everything else. I mean, it seems like it was decades ago, but it's so much easier now in a lot of ways. I don't know, Stefan, if you can unmute everyone in case somebody has something they'd like to mention or request or
people
ask.
should be able to unmute themselves.
Okay.
There we go.
I just think we should try to estimate how many trees we've saved in the last 15 months.
If not on the projects with our packets, right?
No, that's, yeah, not the packet.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Jessica, is you recused yourself on the bus stop item, and I wondered if there was any news you would want to tell us about that, or enlighten us as to why you were recused?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a lot of comments about your conversation about the bus stops, but I'm not allowed to add to that. But I recused myself because it was an assignment at Madison College for the students to enter this competition. And I teach there, so I recused. I know some of the entrants that you were reviewing, so fun.
Well, I think now they'll be able to announce the names of the winners. So it'll be interesting to see who's got a check coming in the mail.
Oh, yeah. No kidding.
That's what I was hoping you were going to tell us, that you had won $5,000 or $10,000.
And she was going to take us all out to dinner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bite treats.
No such luck.
Okay. I'm going to channel Rafiq and thank you again for a short agenda for however many meetings in a row. This is really nice to be done a little bit after 6.
Okay.
I don't know how long our luck is going to last, but hopefully a few more times.
Also like to compliment Shane for taking advantage of being mobile. You're the smartest one of all of us right now.
Yeah, good job. All right. So without any further comment, we've got another meeting, I think on the 9th of June. Look forward to seeing everybody then. By unanimous consent at 6:11, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.